Hello, my friend. Welcome. Tonight, let us pause together, letting the noise of the world soften for a while, and ask ourselves a quiet question. What does it mean to live like a hero? Not the kind of hero you find in comic books or on giant screens, but the kind who rises every morning, walks through ordinary streets, and yet carries a light that changes lives. Robin Sharma calls this the everyday hero. The person who understands that greatness is not the privilege of the few, but the responsibility of us all. Before we begin this journey, let me offer you this invitation. If you find this summary helpful, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to BookSnap, and comment below the title of the book you'd like us to summarize next. We'll make it happen soon. Now, let's step into the story. Perhaps you've always imagined heroes as people who did extraordinary things, explorers who discovered new worlds, leaders who moved nations, artists whose names filled textbooks. But Sharma whispers a different truth. A hero is not defined by scale, but by spirit. A hero is the parent who rises early to provide for their family, the teacher who believes in a child others have written off, the neighbor who offers kindness in a world that often forgets how to be kind. Inside each of us lives this quiet possibility, this seed of greatness. It doesn't shout, it doesn't demand attention. It waits, humbly, for the moment we decide to water it with courage, discipline, and love. That is the awakening the book calls us to see our lives not as random days strung together, but as sacred opportunities to practice heroism in the everyday. But awakening requires a shift in vision. So much of our culture teaches us to wait for permission, for someone to recognize us, for a stage to appear, for applause to validate our worth. Yet the everyday hero needs none of these. They understand that life itself is the stage, and every choice is a performance of character. They begin small, a smile offered to a stranger, patience shown in traffic, a moment of listening when it would have been easier to interrupt. These acts may look insignificant, but they are the building blocks of a heroic life. Think of the sunrise. At first, it is only a thin line of light, barely brushing the horizon. You could dismiss it as too faint to matter. But as it grows, it transforms everything. Darkness fades, colors bloom, the world awakens. So it is with heroism. It does not arrive as a blinding flash. It begins as a quiet glow inside your heart, a single act of courage, a single choice to rise above fear or apathy. And when you repeat that choice day after day, your entire life begins to shine. And here lies the great paradox. The everyday hero is not special because they live without fear or weakness. They are special because they choose to act despite those things. You don't wait to be fearless before you lead. You don't wait to be perfect before you help. You step forward, flawed and trembling, and discover that heroism is not the absence of limitation, but the willingness to move anyway. Perhaps right now you feel ordinary, caught in routines, weighed down by responsibilities, unsure if you have anything extraordinary to give. But what if ordinariness is the very canvas of heroism? What if greatness is not hidden in distant mountains or unreachable stars, but in the way you show up for the people and moments right in front of you? Robin Sharma invites us to see ourselves as artists of life, painting with every choice, every word, every gesture. And like any artist, we begin not with a masterpiece but with strokes of practice, awkward and uneven. Over time, those strokes blend into something beautiful. Heroism, too, is practiced, not once in a grand gesture, but daily, in small acts of courage and care. So, as we begin this journey into the Everyday Hero Manifesto, let us awaken to this possibility. You do not need to wait for a perfect moment, or a stage, or permission. The hero within you is already awake, already whispering, already waiting. All that remains is for you to answer. Close your eyes for a moment and imagine a pebble tossed into a still pond. The pebble is small, almost weightless, and yet the ripples stretch far beyond where it landed. This is how Robin Sharma describes the power of small acts. Too often, we think heroism must be loud, dramatic, a thunderclap in history. But the everyday hero understands that the smallest gestures carry echoes that can outlast the grandest monuments. Think of a morning commute where tempers flare, where horns blare, where everyone is rushing. In the middle of that chaos, someone lets another car merge in front of them with a simple wave of the hand. The act is tiny, almost forgettable, but it softens the sharp edges of the day. Or picture a teacher kneeling beside a struggling student, whispering, "I believe in you." Those words take only seconds to say, but in the heart of that child, they plant a seed of confidence that may one day grow into an entire forest of possibility. Sharma calls us to remember that greatness is not measured in scale, but in significance. One kind word, one patient breath, one courageous decision. These are the bricks of a heroic life. When repeated day after day, they build cathedrals of character. But here's the challenge. Small acts are easy to overlook. We are conditioned to chase the spectacular, to dismiss the ordinary. We think, what difference does it make if I smile at the cashier? If I write one page today? If I take 10 minutes to meditate? Yet the science of growth tells us that consistency multiplies. What looks insignificant in the moment compounds into transformation over time. The hero doesn't wait for a grand opportunity. They create heroism in the everyday. Consider the story of someone who decides to rise 15 minutes earlier each morning. At first, the change feels trivial. What can 15 minutes do? But in that space, they write a paragraph, read a page, stretch their body. Days stack into weeks, weeks into months. By year's end, they have finished a manuscript, read several books, grown healthier and calmer. What began as 15 minutes became a doorway to a different life. The act was small, but the ripple was immense. Or think of the stranger who offers a smile to someone carrying invisible burdens. That smile might be the only kindness that person receives that day. It costs nothing, yet it may change everything. You will never know how far your ripple travels. You are not meant to. Your task is only to drop the pebble up. The beauty of small acts is that they are accessible to all of us. You don't need wealth, status, or power to live heroically. You need presence. You need awareness. You need the willingness to use what is already in your hands. The everyday hero does not wait for the world to hand them a sword. They wield kindness as their weapon, discipline as their shield, compassion as their compass. And small acts do not only impact others, they sculpt you. Every time you choose patience instead of anger, generosity instead of withholding, focus instead of distraction, you are shaping the architecture of your own character. Heroism is not something you occasionally perform. It is something you gradually become, act by act, choice by choice. So, look closely at your life. The way you greet the morning, the way you answer an email, the way you listen to your child or your colleague, all of it matters. All of it leaves ripples. The everyday hero is not waiting for the grand gesture. They are busy planting seeds in soil that looks ordinary, trusting that one day it will bloom into something extraordinary. The world may not notice these small acts right away. There may be no applause, no headlines. But heroism does not seek recognition. It seeks impact. And impact is always built in whispers before it is ever shouted. So tomorrow, when you wake, ask yourself not, "What great thing will I accomplish?" but rather, "What small act of courage or kindness can I offer today?" Then offer it. Let the ripples travel where they will. Because in the end, it is not the size of the act that defines the hero, but the size of the heart behind it. There is a quiet battlefield inside every one of us. It is not fought with weapons or soldiers, but with whispers. Whispers of doubt, of fear, of hesitation. These inner dragons rise whenever we dare to reach higher, and too often we mistake their voices for truth. Robin Sharma tells us that to live as an everyday hero, we must first learn to face these shadows within. Think of the last time you stood at the edge of something new, a project you longed to begin, a conversation you needed to have, a dream you secretly held. At first, the vision felt alive, glowing with possibility. But then, almost instantly, the voices began. You're not ready. Who do you think you are? What if you fail? Those voices are not the truth of who you are. They are the dragons guarding the treasure of your potential. And, like every dragon in every story, they appear not to destroy you, but to test you. Fear whispers to keep you safe, but in doing so, it keeps you small. Doubt pretends to be wise caution, but in truth, it is the thief of possibility. The everyday hero learns to recognize these voices for what they are: illusions, echoes of old wounds, projections of a self that has forgotten its strength. To face them is not to silence them, for they may never fully vanish, but to move anyway, carrying the fear as you step forward. Imagine a climber scaling a mountain. Halfway up, the wind howls, the rocks tremble, and the mind screams, "Turn back." Yet the climber grips tighter, breathes deeper, and places one more foot on the rock. The fear does not disappear, but it no longer commands the body. That is what it means to face your dragons, not to wait for them to leave, but to continue your ascent with them watching. Sharma reminds us that courage is not the absence of fear. It is action in the presence of fear. The mother who takes a second job to provide for her children, the student who raises their hand despite trembling, the artist who shares their work knowing it may be criticized, these are not fearless people. They are people who have learned that their dreams are more important than their dragons. But courage also means compassion for yourself. Too often, we berate ourselves for being afraid, layering shame on top of fear. The everyday hero instead treats fear as a signal, a sign that growth is near, that the edge of comfort is where transformation begins. Fear is proof that you are alive to possibility. There is also another dragon: perfectionism. The voice that says, "Don't begin until it's flawless. Don't try until you're certain." But perfectionism is a clever disguise for fear. It promises excellence, but delivers paralysis. The everyday hero trades perfection for progress. They take the first step, knowing it will be messy, knowing it may fail, but trusting that movement itself is victory. And then there is the dragon of comparison. You see others achieving more, shining brighter, moving faster. You tell yourself you are behind, unworthy, invisible. But comparison blinds you to your own unique journey. The everyday hero remembers that life is not a race. It is a path walked at the pace of the soul. Your only measure is who you are becoming, not who stands beside you. Facing your inner dragons is not about slaying them once and for all. It is about learning to walk with them, to listen without obeying, to see them as teachers rather than tyrants. Each time you face fear and still act, you earn a piece of freedom. Each time you doubt yourself and still step forward, you reveal more of your hidden strength. Each time you stumble and rise again, you grow into the hero you were always meant to be. So tonight, ask yourself, what dragons are whispering in your ear? What fear has been holding you back? What doubt has been stealing your voice? What perfectionism has been chaining your hands? And then ask yourself a deeper question. What treasure might be waiting just beyond them? Because the truth is this: your dragons are not the end of the story. They are the beginning of your heroism. And the moment you step forward, trembling, imperfect, alive, you will discover that the fire they breathe cannot burn you. It can only light your way. There is a sacred hush in the early hours, a silence so delicate it feels as if the world itself is holding its breath. The streets are still, the sky painted in soft shades of blue and gray, and most people are still asleep. It is in this silence that the everyday hero begins to shape their life. Robin Sharma calls it morning mastery. the art of owning the day by owning its beginning. Think of dawn as a blank canvas. Before distractions paint over it, before demands scribble across it, you have a chance to decide the colors, the strokes, the direction. Too often we rush past this gift. We wake to alarms, to emails, to the buzzing of obligations. We stumble into the day reacting, not creating. But the hero rises earlier, not to do more, but to be more. Imagine yourself waking while the house is still dark. You step into the quiet, feeling the cool air on your skin, the hush wrapping around you. Instead of grabbing your phone, you sit with yourself. You breathe deeply, letting the noise of yesterday fade. You write in a journal, capturing thoughts before the day scatters them. You stretch, letting your body wake with intention. You read words that inspire, not headlines that inflame. In these simple rituals, you set the rhythm for everything that follows. Sharma speaks of the 5 a.m. club, rising at a time when the world is quiet, when your mind is uncluttered, when the first victory of discipline strengthens your sense of self. It is not about the hour itself, but about claiming sacred space before the world intrudes. In that space, you can build focus, gratitude, and clarity. Consider an artist stepping into their studio at dawn. The light is soft, the room silent. They pick up a brush and begin to paint. By the time others wake, they have already created something beautiful. Or picture an athlete lacing up their shoes as the city sleeps, pounding the pavement while stars still shimmer overhead. These moments do not just train the body, they train the spirit. They whisper, "I honor my life enough to begin it with intention." But morning mastery is not limited to grand rituals. It is in the choice to read instead of scroll, to stretch instead of slump, to plan instead of drift. Each choice is small, but together they create momentum. By the time the world catches up, the everyday hero has already written part of their story. The magic of the morning lies not only in what you do, but in what you remember. In the quiet, you remember that your life is not just a list of tasks, but a sacred opportunity. You remember your goals, your values, your purpose. You remind yourself of who you want to be, before the world tells you who to be. This remembering becomes your compass for the day. And yes, there will be days when waking early feels heavy, when discipline falters, when the bed feels like a warm anchor pulling you down. But the everyday hero learns to see those mornings not as failures, but as practice. Heroism is not in perfection. It is in persistence. You rise again tomorrow, and the next day, and the next. Over time, the habit becomes identity. You are someone who chooses creation over reaction, intention over drift. So, as the sun begins to rise, remember this. The way you greet the morning is the way you greet your life. If you stumble into it, distracted and rushed, your day will mirror that chaos. But if you step into it with clarity, gratitude, and intention, your day becomes a stage where your hidden hero can perform. The world will demand much of you today. Work, family, obligations, noise. But for these first quiet moments, the world is yours. Guard them fiercely. Use them wisely. Because in the stillness of dawn, you are not just starting a day. You are building a life. There is a quiet strength in consistency, the kind that does not roar but hums steadily, like the heartbeat of a life well lived. Robin Sharma tells us that everyday heroes are not made in bursts of brilliance, but in the slow, almost invisible discipline of showing up again and again. Bravery is not a single dramatic act. It is crafted through the steady rhythm of habits that hold you when motivation fades. Think of the mason building a wall. Brick by brick, they place each stone with care. To an onlooker, the work appears monotonous, unremarkable. But one day, when the wall stands tall and firm, it becomes clear that every single brick mattered. So it is with the habits of an everyday hero. Rising early, exercising when it would be easier to sleep, writing a few words each day, listening fully in conversations. These may seem small, but together they create resilience, character, and courage. We often admire those who take bold leaps. The entrepreneur who risks everything, the athlete who wins the medal, the artist who produces a masterpiece. But what we rarely see are the unglamorous routines that made those leaps possible. The entrepreneur reading late into the night, the athlete training before sunrise, the artist sketching draft after draft. These hidden patterns of discipline forge the bravery to act when it matters most. Consistency also teaches us something profound about courage. It is not a sudden flame, but a steady fire. Anyone can act boldly once, but to keep showing up when there is no applause, no recognition, no immediate reward, that is true bravery. It means choosing integrity over convenience, growth over comfort, practice over procrastination. Perhaps you've experienced this yourself. You begin a habit, journaling, meditating, learning a language, and at first it feels exciting. Then, after a few days or weeks, the thrill fades. The results are invisible. Doubt creeps in. Why bother? But if you persist, something shifts. The act itself becomes easier, smoother, even joyful. You realize the habit is no longer just something you do. It is who you are becoming. Consistency is also an antidote to fear. When you commit to a ritual, you no longer rely on fleeting confidence. You act because the habit carries you. The runner who laces their shoes daily does not ask, "Do I feel like it?" They simply run. The writer who sits at their desk every morning does not wait for inspiration. They write until inspiration finds them. This reliability builds courage because it proves to you, day after day, that you are capable of more than you imagined. And there is beauty in the obscurity of it all. Much of your discipline will go unseen, uncelebrated. But that is the secret. The heroic life is not lived for applause. It is lived for alignment, for the quiet pride of knowing that your actions match your values, even when no one is watching. Think of a garden tended daily. The watering can is lifted, the weeds pulled, the soil tilled. To passers-by, it looks like nothing is happening. But one morning, blooms appear, radiant and undeniable. In the same way, your consistent habits bloom into courage at the moments you need it most. So tonight, as you reflect, ask yourself, what are the bricks you are laying each day? Are they shaping a wall of excuses or a fortress of strength? Are they building a life of drift or a life of direction? Heroism is not in waiting for the right moment. It is in practicing the right choices until they define you. Bravery, in the end, is not born from grand gestures. It is born from the small, consistent acts that say, "I will keep going, no matter what." And when you live that way, you discover a deeper truth. The strongest heroes are not the ones who burn brightest once, but the ones who shine steadily long after the crowd has gone. There is a place beyond noise, beyond urgency, where the mind slows and the heart speaks more clearly. It is a place most of us rarely visit, yet it is always waiting. The quiet sanctuary of solitude and silence. Robin Sharma reminds us that everyday heroes do not simply fill their days with action. They also carve space for stillness, because stillness is where the soul regains its strength. Think of how the world pulls at you. Messages ping, notifications flash, voices call, responsibilities pile. The modern world thrives on speed, but in that rush, something precious is lost: the ability to hear your own voice. Silence feels awkward, even threatening, to those unaccustomed to it. But for the everyday hero, it is sacred ground. Picture yourself walking into a forest at dawn. The air is cool, carrying the scent of pine and earth. The only sounds are birds stirring in the trees, a stream whispering nearby, your own breath steadying with each step. There are no emails here, no deadlines, no demands. Only you, the earth, and the space to remember who you are. That is what solitude gives, a chance to step outside the world's noise and step back into yourself. Sharma calls this practice essential not only for peace, but for creativity. Great ideas rarely arrive in crowded rooms. They emerge in the pauses, in the spaces where the mind is allowed to wander, to connect unexpected dots. Think of Newton under the apple tree, Einstein on solitary walks, artists retreating into their studios. Silence is not empty. It is fertile. But silence is not only for the mind. It nourishes the heart. In solitude, you notice emotions you've buried beneath busyness. You feel the grief you avoided, the joy you forgot, the gratitude you've neglected. Solitude softens you, makes you more human, more compassionate. Everyday heroes know that to serve others well, they must first care for their own inner life. This is not easy in a culture that glorifies busyness. Sitting still can feel indulgent, even irresponsible. But in truth, it is discipline of the highest order. It takes courage to turn off the phone, to step away from the crowd, to sit with yourself. It takes humility to admit that you cannot pour endlessly without refilling, and it takes wisdom to understand that solitude is not withdrawal, but preparation, a sharpening of the sword before stepping back into the fight. Perhaps you've noticed this in your own life. After a walk in nature, after 10 minutes of quiet breathing, after an hour with no distractions, you return clearer, calmer, stronger. Problems that felt overwhelming shrink into perspective. Choices that seemed tangled become simple. The silence did not change the world, but it changed how you meet it. Everyday heroes make a practice of this. They protect small pockets of stillness like treasures. A few minutes of reflection at sunrise, a pause in the middle of the day to breathe, a moment of gratitude before sleep. These are not luxuries. They are lifelines. And here is the paradox. By stepping away, you return more powerfully. By being still, you act with greater clarity. By choosing silence, your voice becomes more authentic. Solitude is not an escape from life. It is the forge where your inner strength is tempered, where your truest values are remembered, where your deepest creativity awakens. So tonight, ask yourself, where in your life can you create more silence? Where can you step away, even briefly, to let your soul catch its breath? The world will always clamor for more of you. But the everyday hero remembers that the greatest gift you can give, to your work, to your family, to your community, is a self that has been renewed in stillness. Because in solitude, you are not empty. You are full of clarity, of peace, of purpose. And from that fullness you can walk back into the noisy world, not as someone drained and distracted, but as someone who carries a quiet strength, a strength born from life when you realize that all the accomplishments, all the possessions, all the applause will one day fade into dust. What endures is not what you kept, but what you gave. Robin Sharma teaches that service is not an afterthought to heroism. It is its heartbeat. To live as an everyday hero is to shift from asking, "What can I take?" to asking, "What can I give?" Think of the nurse working through the night, tending to patients who will never know her name, or the neighbor who mows the lawn of an elderly friend without being asked, or the mentor who spends hours guiding someone younger, asking for nothing in return. These people may not be celebrated, but their lives echo with significance because they understand a truth we too often forget. Service is the path to meaning. At first, service may sound like sacrifice, as though giving diminishes you. But in practice, the opposite happens. Each act of generosity enlarges you. Each moment of kindness lifts you. To serve others is to remember that life is not measured by what you accumulate, but by the love you circulate. Imagine yourself walking into a crowded cafe. Everyone is lost in their own world, screens glowing, conversations buzzing. You notice a stranger struggling to carry coffee to a table, their hands trembling slightly. You stand, take a few steps, and help them. It takes less than a minute, yet in that instant, you become a thread of connection in the tapestry of humanity. You walk back to your seat lighter, not heavier, because you've touched something larger than yourself. Sharma reminds us that the greatest leaders are not those who command, but those who serve. The parent who sacrifices for their child, the teacher who nurtures their students, the leader who prioritizes their team's growth. These are the true heroes, not because they seek recognition, but because they seek impact. Service also transforms suffering. When you are caught in your own pain, your world shrinks. But the moment you extend a hand to another, your perspective widens. You discover resilience not by escaping hardship, but by using it as fuel to help others heal. Your wounds become bridges. Your scars become lanterns. The everyday hero does not wait until life is perfect to give. They serve through imperfection, and it is precisely this humanity that makes their service so powerful. Perhaps you have been on the receiving end of such heroism. Someone listened when you felt invisible. Someone encouraged you when you doubted yourself. Someone gave without keeping score. You may not remember their exact words, but you remember how they made you feel. Valued, seen, alive. That is the legacy of service. It imprints not in the mind, but in the heart. And service need not always be dramatic. It can be as small as writing a note of appreciation, offering a genuine smile, making time to truly listen. These are not trivial. They are acts of courage in a world that often rushes past connection. The everyday hero chooses them again and again, weaving a life that quietly lifts others. In serving, you discover that the boundary between me and them is thinner than you imagined. Their joy becomes your joy. Their healing becomes your healing. Their growth becomes your reward. Service dissolves isolation and reveals the truth. We rise together or not at all. So ask yourself tonight, who needs your light? Where can you extend your hand, your time, your heart? The answer need not be grand. It need only be sincere, because every act of service, no matter how small, leaves behind a trace of grace. And perhaps this is the deepest secret of heroism. The everyday hero does not serve to be remembered. They serve so that others may remember their own worth. And in doing so, they write a legacy not of monuments, but of lives touched. Every one of us carries scars, some visible, most hidden. They are the remnants of disappointments, heartbreaks, failures, betrayals, and losses. For many, pain becomes a prison, locking them in patterns of fear or resentment. But Robin Sharma insists that pain can be something else entirely, the raw material of power. To live as an everyday hero is not to avoid suffering, but to transmute it, to take what once threatened to break you and use it as fuel for deeper strength and compassion. Think of a potter shaping clay. In its raw state, the clay is fragile, easily marred, but when it is placed in the fire, something remarkable happens. The heat that could have destroyed it instead transforms it into something durable, beautiful, lasting. So it is with us. Our hardships are the kiln. Our resilience is the art that emerges from the flames. Perhaps you remember a time when life pulled the ground from beneath you. A dream collapsed, a relationship ended, a health challenge arrived without warning. In that moment, you may have thought you would never stand again. Yet here you are, listening, breathing, moving forward. The pain did not vanish, but it reshaped you. It carved humility into your pride, empathy into your judgments, courage into your hesitation. You became softer in spirit and stronger in will. This is the paradox of suffering. It weakens the shell but fortifies the soul. Sharma reminds us that heroes are not those who live untouched lives, but those who allow their wounds to become wisdom. The person who knows grief can comfort the grieving. The one who has stumbled can guide others away from the same stones. The leader who has failed understands the humility required to rise again. Pain refines us into vessels of service. There is also power in refusing to let suffering define you. Everyday heroes do not deny their pain, but neither do they worship it. They acknowledge it, honor it, and then ask, "What will I do with this?" Some turn pain into art, a song, a story, a painting that moves hearts. Others turn it into action, building organizations, supporting causes, mentoring those who walk the same hard path. Whatever the form, the message is the same. My pain will not be wasted. Think of a runner who once suffered a devastating injury. Doctors told her she would never compete again. She faced years of rehabilitation, days filled with frustration and doubt. But in the process, she discovered a new strength, the ability to inspire others facing physical limitations. She began coaching, mentoring, reminding them through her presence that setbacks do not end dreams. They reshape them. Her wound became her gift, and so it can be for you. The places where you have been broken are the very places where your heroism can shine brightest. You do not need to pretend you are unscarred. You need only to let your scars remind you. You survived. You endured. You grew. And now you can help others endure, too. Pain also deepens gratitude. When you have walked through darkness, light feels more precious. When you have lost, love feels more sacred. When you have been humbled, joy feels more radiant. The everyday hero learns to savor what once was taken for granted: a sunrise, a laugh, a hand held. Suffering does not diminish life. It sharpens its sweetness. So tonight, as you reflect on your own journey, consider the pains you carry. Ask yourself, have they closed me, or have they carved me open? Have they hardened my heart, or have they softened it into empathy? Because within each wound lies a choice, to become bitter or to become better. And the everyday hero chooses better, again and again. In the end, pain is not the enemy of potential. It is the forge. It is the teacher that strips away illusion, that reveals what cannot be broken, that shows us we are more resilient than we ever believed. And when you learn to turn pain into power, you no longer fear the fire. You step into it knowing that what emerges will be stronger, truer, more alive. Discipline. The very word can sound harsh, like a set of shackles or a stern teacher's voice echoing down a hallway. Many people hear it and think of restriction, of saying no to pleasures, of forcing themselves into rigid molds. But Robin Sharma turns the idea upside down. He reminds us that true discipline is not imprisonment, it is liberation. It is the art of aligning your daily actions with your deepest values, so that life itself becomes a joyful expression of who you are meant to be. Think of a musician. At first, the scales are tedious, the metronome relentless, the practice repetitive. But slowly, the discipline of practice gives way to freedom. The fingers no longer stumble, they dance. The musician no longer thinks about each note, they feel the music. Discipline has not stolen joy, it has created it. Without those hours of repetition, there could be no soaring melody. In the same way, everyday heroes learn to see discipline as a gift, the path that leads to freedom, not away from it. Imagine waking each morning and choosing actions not out of impulse, but out of intention. You move your body because health allows you to serve more fully. You read and learn because wisdom expands your impact. You work with focus because excellence is an offering to the world. Each choice may look small, even ordinary, but when repeated with discipline, it becomes extraordinary. Sharma calls this the art of joyful discipline. Joyful because it is not born of punishment, but of devotion. It is not about denying yourself what you love. It is about creating a life you can love more deeply. A writer sits down at the desk every day not because they hate freedom, but because they love the freedom of expression that discipline makes possible. A parent commits to being present each evening not because they must, but because they cherish the fleeting gift of time with their children. Discipline, when rooted in love, stops being a cage and becomes a compass. Of course, there will be resistance. The body craves comfort. The mind longs for distraction. The world offers endless temptations to drift. But every act of discipline is a reminder. I am stronger than my impulses. I am faithful to my values. Each time you rise above the easy choice, you weave another thread into the fabric of your character. Over time, those threads become unbreakable. And here is the beautiful secret. Discipline compounds. One act leads to another. The morning workout makes the mind sharper for the day's work. The habit of reading sparks new ideas for your projects. The commitment to journaling clarifies your values, which in turn shapes your choices. Like dominoes falling, one disciplined act sets the next in motion, until your entire life flows with momentum. But joyful discipline is not about perfection. There will be days you falter, moments you slip, seasons where the habits fall apart. The everyday hero does not collapse into shame. They begin again. They remember that discipline is not a straight line, but a rhythm. Falling and rising, losing and returning, stumbling and continuing. The music of growth is played not in flawless notes, but in faithful practice. Think of a garden. To keep it alive, you water, weed, and tend to it regularly. If you skip a day, the garden does not collapse. You simply return the next day and continue. Discipline is the same. It is not broken by one lapse, only by abandonment. The hero's secret is not unbroken consistency, but unbroken return. So tonight, consider how discipline lives in your life. Does it feel like a burden, or can you reframe it as devotion? What if the routines you resist are not chains, but keys? Keys to health, to clarity, to freedom, to joy. Because discipline, embraced with love, is not the end of pleasure. It is the doorway into a life where your actions, your values, and your dreams finally move in harmony. And when that happens, discipline is no longer something you have to do. It becomes something you get to do. Each act becomes a declaration. This is who I am. This is the life I choose. That is the art of joyful discipline, and it is one of the surest marks of the everyday hero. All of us wear masks. Some are stitched from fear, some from ambition, some from the quiet ache to be accepted. We put them on to appear confident when we feel uncertain, to look strong when we feel fragile, to seem agreeable when we long to speak truth. Yet behind every mask lies a truer self, a self that wants to breathe, to be seen, to live without pretense. Robin Sharma calls us to fierce authenticity, because the everyday hero cannot serve the world while hiding behind disguises. Think of how exhausting it is to perform a role that isn't yours. To smile when you want to cry, to agree when your heart says no, to chase goals that don't belong to you. It is like walking through life carrying armor that grows heavier with every step. Authenticity, then, is not a luxury. It is liberation. To strip away the masks is to finally walk unburdened. But authenticity is not without risk. The world often rewards conformity. It praises those who follow the script, who blend in, who cause no disruption. To stand in your truth may cost you approval, even relationships. Yet every great life has been lived by someone who chose truth over acceptance. Gandhi, who refused to bow to empire. Rosa Parks, who refused to give up her seat. Countless artists, thinkers, and quiet souls who refused to silence their voices. Authenticity is not always safe, but it is always sacred. Perhaps you felt the quiet tension of living a divided life. The person you are inside and the person you present outside. That gap drains energy, erodes joy, numbs purpose. The everyday hero closes that gap. They say what they mean with kindness, live according to their values, and dare to disappoint others rather than betray themselves. Their courage is not in shouting their truth, but in living it, steadily and consistently, even when no one notices. Authenticity also deepens connection. When you drop the mask, others feel permission to drop theirs. Vulnerability calls to vulnerability. A leader who admits, "I don't have all the answers," builds more trust than one who pretends to be invincible. A friend who shares their struggle creates space for another to share theirs. Authenticity is contagious. It spreads courage like wildfire. But what does fierce authenticity look like in daily life? It may look like choosing work that aligns with your values, even if it pays less. It may look like walking away from relationships that dim your light. It may look like pursuing art that no one understands yet but feels true to you. Or it may look like something quieter, saying no when your schedule is already full, speaking honestly in a meeting, or simply allowing yourself to rest when the world demands hustle. Living authentically does not mean living perfectly. It means living honestly. It means admitting when you're wrong, apologizing when you've hurt someone, celebrating when you've succeeded without diminishing yourself. It is a daily practice of alignment. Does this choice honor who I really am? Of course, there will be resistance, not only from others, but from within. The inner critic will say, if you reveal yourself, they won't accept you. But the truth is this: not everyone will accept you, mask or no mask. So why trade your authenticity for approval that will never satisfy? Better to live true and be loved by a few than to live false and be loved by many. And here lies the deeper magic. When you step fully into who you are, you discover strength you never knew you had. Energy returns, joy expands, creativity flows, the weight lifts, because you are no longer pretending. You are simply being. And in being, you shine. So tonight, ask yourself, what mask have I been wearing, and what might it cost me to take it off? The answer may frighten you, but it may also free you. For the everyday hero, authenticity is not an option. It is the foundation. Only when you are brave enough to be yourself can you become the light the world needs. Legacy. It is a word that sounds so final, as if it belongs only to the last chapter of life, carved into stone or written in history books. But Robin Sharma reminds us that legacy is not something you leave behind when you die. It is something you write every single day, in every choice, in every interaction. The everyday hero does not wait for someday to craft their legacy. They live it, moment by moment, in the most ordinary of places. Think of footprints in the sand. Each step leaves a mark, some small, some deep. The tide may wash many away, but the pattern of your walk remains, shaping the beach for those who come after. Legacy works the same way. It isn't built in a single grand act, but in the thousands of small impressions you leave as you move through life. Consider the teacher who spends decades in a classroom. Few remember the exact lessons or dates, but countless students remember the encouragement, the patience, the belief that shaped who they became. Or the parent who quietly shows up at every game, every recital, every bedtime story. Not with fanfare, but with unwavering presence. These moments do not make headlines, but they build a legacy of love, reliability, and devotion. We often believe legacy must be extraordinary. A foundation established, a monument built, a prize won. But the everyday hero knows better. Legacy is not about scale. It is about integrity. It is about aligning your actions with your values so consistently that others cannot help but feel the truth of who you were. Your kindness becomes your legacy. Your integrity becomes your legacy. Your courage becomes your legacy. And here's the liberating truth. Legacy is not a distant project. It is happening right now. Every word you speak shapes it. Every decision you make carves it. Even in your mistakes, your legacy is written, not in the stumble itself, but in how you rise, how you repair, how you grow. Children, colleagues, friends, and even strangers are always watching, not for your perfection, but for your pattern. And the pattern, over time, becomes the story of your life. Sharma invites us to live with what he calls deliberate urgency. The awareness that time is finite, and thus every moment matters. This urgency is not about rushing or cramming more into your days. It is about honoring each day as a chance to shape something meaningful. When you view time this way, even mundane tasks become sacred. Washing dishes becomes an act of care. Writing an email becomes an opportunity to inspire. Sitting with a loved one becomes a chance to leave a memory that outlasts words. Legacy is also not only personal, it is collective. The culture of a workplace, the spirit of a family, the tone of a community, all are legacies formed by countless everyday choices. When you treat a colleague with respect, you contribute to a culture of trust. When you listen deeply to a child, you build a family legacy of safety. When you volunteer in your community, you leave behind a spirit of compassion. You may never see the full ripple of your actions, but they exist, woven invisibly into the lives of others. And legacy does not wait until you are ready. It is being written in how you greet the barista, how you handle frustration in traffic, how you show up when no one else is looking. The everyday hero is mindful of this, not as a burden, but as a privilege. Each moment is a brushstroke on the canvas of a life that will inspire long after you are gone. So, as you sit with this truth, ask yourself, what story am I writing today? If someone were to describe me not in grand achievements, but in daily actions, what would they say? Would they speak of kindness, presence, and courage, or of distraction, impatience, and regret? The good news is that the pen is still in your hand. You can begin rewriting your legacy this very moment, because in the end, legacy is not about the monument others build for you. It is about the lives you touched, the love you gave, the courage you lived. And the beauty of it all is that you do not need to wait until someday. Your legacy is alive, right here, in the choices you make tonight, tomorrow morning, and every ordinary day that follows. Imagine walking down a dimly lit street. The lamps are few, the shadows long, and those who wander look uneasy, searching for direction. Then one person lifts a lantern. Its glow is not strong enough to banish all the darkness, but it is enough to light the next few steps. Others gather closer, steadied by the glow, encouraged to move forward. That is what it means to be an everyday hero, not to eliminate all darkness, but to become a light bright enough to guide others through it. Robin Sharma closes his manifesto with this truth: heroism is not perfection. It is presence. It is not the absence of flaws, but the willingness to rise anyway, to shine anyway, to love anyway. Everyday heroes are not those who never stumble, but those who, in their stumbling, remind others that it is still possible to keep going. Think of the single parent who, despite exhaustion, still finds time to read to their child at night. The leader who admits mistakes openly, modeling humility instead of hiding behind pride. The artist who shares their work, even when vulnerable to criticism, because their truth may free someone else. None of these people claim to be flawless, yet their light shines, precisely because it is real. And here lies the paradox of the everyday hero. You do not become a light for others by pretending to be invincible. You become a light by being human, by letting your courage, compassion, and persistence shine through the cracks. As Leonard Cohen once wrote, "There is a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in." Sharma would add, "It's also how the light gets out." The world today is crowded with noise, fear, division, and distraction. It is easy to feel powerless against such tides, but the everyday hero refuses despair. They remember that even the smallest flame can push back the dark. A kind word spoken in tension can diffuse anger. A moment of listening can heal loneliness. A daily act of service can ripple outward farther than you will ever see. Your light, however modest it seems, matters. And here is the most beautiful truth of all. When you shine, you invite others to shine too. Courage is contagious. Kindness spreads. Integrity inspires. One lantern lifted becomes 2, then 10, then 1,000. until the street no longer feels so dark. You may never know whose life you touched, whose burden you eased, whose hope you rekindled, but you will know that your light was not wasted. So tonight, as this journey comes to a close, ask yourself, where can you shine tomorrow? Who in your life needs your presence, your patience, your courage? How can you live not as a flawless monument, but as a lantern carried through the night? You don't need to change the whole world. You only need to brighten the corner where you stand. The Everyday Hero Manifesto is not about waiting for destiny. It is about choosing daily. Choosing to rise with intention, to act with love, to live with truth, to serve with humility. Choosing, again and again, to let your light be seen. And when enough of us choose this way of life, the world itself begins to change. Not through one grand act, but through millions of small ones. Not through perfection, but through persistence. Not through distant heroes, but through everyday people. People like you, who decide to shine. So lift your lantern, my friend. Walk into the world tomorrow with quiet courage. Shine brightly enough to help someone else find their way. And in doing so, you will discover the deepest secret of all. You were a hero all along. Oh, 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 all along.